Suspension of flights, diversion to neighboring countries, delays and cancellation. These are stories from the aviation sector in Nigeria in recent times. The cost, the upgrade of the instrument landing system.
NAMA, the Airspace Management Agency, had already started installing Cat 3 ILS. And so installing Cat 3, you had to remove Cat 2 that was there.
The issue of customer service in communication and compensation is another line of discussion which has been drawn from the recent incidents.
I had to pay out of pocket from Friday to date, accommodation, feeding, and what have you. There were so many people that were here on that day, didn't have any other money. I know a woman with a child who only had $4 left.
Big story goes to the aviation sector on this episode. You're welcome. I'm Ini John Mekwa. It was supposed to be a trip that would last for just 8 days in the United States of America. But little did the Dean of School of Postgraduate Studies of the University of Lagos, Professor Alabishoneye, know that they will have to cross the Atlantic Ocean 4 times within 2 weeks.
Everything looked perfect until some 2.5 hours to Lagos. We were actually on the airfield of around Côte d'Ivoire when on my screen I saw the diversion that instead of destination Lagos that we have been watching 2.5 hours or so 1,000 plus kilometers, I just saw that the new destination is Dakar. And that caught, I was curious. You know, when you are in the air, 10,000 meters above your ground level, anything could happen. Then about 10 minutes later, the captain came on air and said, sorry, you have seen on your screen, we are now going to Dakar. It's because of the bad weather situation in Lagos. We will have landed in either Accra or Abidjan. But because the facilities there were so overstretched, that there were so many flights that had been so diverted there. And so the logistics in terms of parking facilities, hotel logistics, even the airport logistics seemed to have been overstretched. So we got to Dakar and landed. Then intermittently it was telling us, it was giving us information as what was going on between Atlanta, Lagos, and the aircraft, the crew. So eventually he said that, well, they thought that he could still land. But Lagos told him he should just not bother, that the weather was just so bad. Well, we eventually learned that the problem was because of the Harmattan haze and the dust. And the visibility was really so poor. Therefore, I think he wanted to risk it. So we were in the aircraft for about 3 hours, thinking that we would still take off. This was about 1 o'clock Nigerian time. So we were there till about 4, and eventually he announced that there was just no way he could go.
After spending a night in Dakar, the capital of Senegal, the passengers were given the option of finding their way to Nigeria or returning to Atlanta with the flight. The latter was not appealing to Professor Shineye. Eventually, he says he was placed in another airline after another night in Atlanta, and then he landed in Abuja, then took a local flight to Lagos. There are other passengers who've had a taste of the delay in the travels because of the challenge in operations.
Actually, I was supposed to fly on Friday to Atlanta, from Atlanta back to Houston. But unfortunately, we couldn't fly because they said that there was weather problem or blah, blah, blah. But the truth is this. It's not about the weather problem. I do understand that our safety is being put into consideration. But at least you owe the people an email, an apology to let them know that, okay, this is what the situation is. But nobody said anything to us. Till about 7:30, the board still had it on there that the flight is on time. That was DL0055. And you can imagine, I flew in from Ilorin that morning. coming to Lagos to come and fly back home, and only for me to be told that. Now, when one of the supervisors of Delta Airline came to speak with us, he said, that is the weather problem. And I'm like, really? Is the weather problem? How come you didn't send an email? You already sent an email a day before then to tell us to check it. Now it's a weather problem, you find it difficult to do the same thing. And he told us, he said it's automated. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, don't take us to the back 70s. If it's automated, some people are directly behind the programming. They could have sent an email. I mean, the frustration was so high that people were like yelling, and I can understand that. For people going back to work, to me today, I'm supposed to be at work. I had to call my office to let them know what's going on. So it's really been very challenging, and it's not been funny at all. For instance, I had to pay out of pocket from Friday to date, accommodation, feeding, and what have you. There were so many people that were here on that day, didn't have any other money. I know a woman with a child who only had $4 left because her mindset was that she was going back home that very day. And nobody was ready to take responsibility. Nobody is saying anything to anybody. And this is the only country I know things like this happen, which is not nice, because people are not being respected or valued.
While the challenges in Lagos State, this spillover affects other operations of domestic flight, as passengers in Delta State complain of operational issues which cause delay of outbound flights.
When I go to Lagos Airport, I booked flight from Lagos Airport to Benin. My flight was cancelled for like 2 days, so I have no option than I took the risk. I have to use vehicle. So if for this now, we are going for business, you understand? And if this flight is being delayed, it's going to affect us.
When I was coming from Kano, that was on Friday last week, I had a delayed flight to same airpiece, and it's not new to me that it's been delayed now. So, but I know some of the issues you encounter when you're flying from Nigeria. It's always the case. Like, so you'll be here on time, or if it's their fault, they don't deem it necessary to actually put you in the no on time.
Why you are seeing some delays is not our fault. The outbound flights from other airports are not able to leave on time on account of weather condition. And once they are not able to leave on time, invariably it will affect when they will now land in Asaba. And you know, when you land as an inbound flight and you arrive late, it is going to affect those that are supposed to depart at a given time, because you did not arrive at the time you are supposed to land because of either operational deficiencies at some other points, or because of weather conditions that are beyond the capabilities of either the outbound port or the operating equipment or the operator himself, in this case the airline. And so when that happens, you expect that there's going to be a delay in terms of outbound flight from Asaba, because Asaba is not the base of most of these airlines. So if they have challenge at their base, you will of course understand that it will affect their schedule here in Asaba.
Aviation consultant Chris Aligbe, who was a manager with the defunct national carrier Nigeria Airways, explains the issue of what happened about the installation of an upgraded instrument landing system, ILS.
ILS, that is normally called, installed on airfields to assist aircraft land properly without missing the runway, land safely. ILS are in various categories. You have Cat 1 ILS, you have Cat 2 ILS, you have Cat 3. For quite some time we've been using Cat 2 in Lagos Airport and Abuja. Most of the airports, international airports have been on Cat 2. But recently, to improve the system, the government decided to equip our major airports, international airports, with Cat 3 ILS. Cat 3 ILS is the highest state of it. But in Cat 3 ILS, you have A, B, C. within it. When you get to sea, that is when you attain zero landing. Whatever the situation is, you will assist in zero landing, whatever the visibility is. Okay, but it's not just only the ILS. You require so many things even to be able to get to that point. The aircraft that is being flown must be equipped to use the instrument landing system, the Cat 3, Cat 1, Cat 3, A, B, or C must be equipped. Then the pilots must be fully trained to be able to land using Cat 3 system. All the air traffic controllers will also have their training, and then there must be uninterrupted power supply. These are the things that you need. What happened is that NAMA, the Airspace Management Agency, had already started installing Cat 3 ILS. And so installing Cat 3, you had to remove Cat 2 that was there. So they started installing Cat 3. But they had not done with installation of Cat 3 when the inclement weather thing occurred. And after installing Cat 3, you have to calibrate it. After installation, you have to calibrate it. Before, we will seek the assistance of ASECNA. ASECNA is the French agency that oversees airspace management in French-speaking West Africa. But they have the calibration aircraft. But when Nigeria started experiencing some certain things they didn't like, Nigeria decided to acquire its own calibration aircraft. And the calibration aircraft was the delivery of it was taken just last month. So it was said while they were doing, and you also need the pilots trained for that calibration. Okay, so all these things happened at the time where the weather became inclement. So there was a kind of there was a timing problem. There was some certain disconnect. They had not finished installing the ILS Cat 3. It hasn't been calibrated. The ILS Cat 2 that was there was being taken away. And so all these things caused the problem. They happened at the same time. So it was an unfortunate accident of the sequence of events, particularly the inclement weather. If the weather was not inclement, all the issue, what happened, would not have happened.
Mr. Ligbe says the weather was unexpected and could not have been predicted, but with the installation of Cat 3, such scenarios would be a thing of the past in the country. His explanation seems in line with that of the Nigeria Airspace Management Agency, NAMA, which started installation of the ILS in November 2019.
The right equipment on board the aircraft.
Unfortunately, this issue of delayed flight is not new in Nigeria. In 2019, the Consumer Protection Department of Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority recorded 16,429 cases of delayed flight and 241 cancelled flights between January and June 2019 with domestic airlines. While the anger of the passengers are towards the airlines, the airport regulating authorities and various levels of government have the responsibility to install facilities which could clear these issues.
Well, while we'll sympathize with some of those airports that are not able to accommodate in-flights on account of the state of the weather, you recall not too long ago, we did not only install, but we began the calibration of our instrument landing system. Though not fully configured because there are a few other things that we need to do, but I can tell you the extent to which we have gone about the configuration. It can now land or make it possible for flights to land even with less than 2,700 meters visibility. And you know what that means. And so that flights that are ordinarily supposed to land in other airports are diverted to Asaba. It's not by accident. It's because we took steps to reposition our airports.
Another issue which arises from delayed and cancelled flights is customer service. Many passengers have in the course of the recent event acquired unplanned expenses in hotels, transport and general discomfort. In spite of the long travel, Professor Chineye has little complaints about the treatment during the period.
I teach disaster management, and I know what happens when disaster occurs. This was not a disaster, it was an emergency. But the response and the recovery was just too marvelous. They gave us very, very good hotel, honestly. The only thing we missed was that we could not communicate on our phone, because the Wi-Fi in the aircraft will not work if you are not up to 10,000 meters or 10,000 feet into the sky.
But he would probably have had a worse experience if his trip had been domestic.
There are regulations in the country, consumer protection regulations of in the Act, NCAA Act, Part 19 of the NCAA Act, Part 19 of the regulation is directly skewed to protect the passenger. Is made for passenger protection, and NCAA implements those regulations, the rights of passengers. But I tell you there's one thing, there are two areas that airlines are not held responsible or culpable. One area primarily is weather, because nobody can determine what weather will be. The airlines can't determine it, the passengers cannot determine, the authorities cannot determine it. So airlines are held responsible in areas where the cause of the delay or cancellation come from them, either from their own internal challenges or whatever. There are others that sometimes come that are technical, but even if it is technical, airlines still have responsibilities. Like an airline wants to take passengers out of Nigeria and suddenly finds that one engine is not functional, it cannot fly that night. All the passengers that are checked, it must take them to the hotel, okay, because it's a technical problem, but then it has some responsibility. But when it comes to weather, it is not within the powers of an airline or any individual to control weather, and because of that, you cannot hold them liable. But what happens? I will tell you this: what happens is that airlines tend to say, "Look, these are our passengers. Because they are passengers, we must do 1, 2, 3." They do it now for market retention. For market retention, particularly in an area where there's enough competition. But what has happened is that airlines, because they feel that there's no competition, they think that tomorrow you must say fly us. They do whatever they want to do, and you have no choice. Sometimes some airlines have been so arrogant. Some cabin crew, maybe some say, if you are dissatisfied, go and fly your own airline.
The story has formed a session of deliberations at the Federal House of Representatives.
Apart from the hardship they face as a result of poor landing facilities at our airport, they also suffer financial losses, and it has gotten to a situation that we need to act immediately, to correct this anomaly. Because apart from the financial losses, it's also affecting the image of the country. And we are a country that requires foreign direct investment. International businesses, businessmen coming into the country, are now being subjected to additional expenses incurred as a result of this delay and outright cancellation.
The House concludes that although the installation was with a good intention, the planning and timing is poor. There's also the allegation that some components of the ILS is missing. The House has also faulted the handling of the situation by NAMA.
They've not spoken a word to Nigeria. It was the aviation minister that came out to speak. In a way, the independence of these agencies are being compromised. What are the powers of the minister and the board or the CEO of the agencies when we have matters like this? I think they owe us an explanation. In the media, it was reported that we have lost about 5 million euros. That's over 2 billion naira for that diversion. And to make matters worse, we want Nigerians to be patriotic. We want them to love our nation. But when there are challenges, it's like we abandon them. Some people were brought to Abuja by a foreign airline. They were lodged at Sheraton. When it was time to move to Lagos, they told them to find their ways. I've never heard of that in all the years I've traveled. And over 300 of them, they provide accommodation for only 200. So some Nigerians slept on the corridor.
I also think that the head of the agencies should be critically addressed as to their negligence for embarrassing this country. For me, I read on social media, newspapers, general news, it is bad, very, very bad. Apart from revenue loss, apart from every other thing, I think the image of Nigeria has been battered in this area. Not that the equipments are not there, not that the funds have not been provided, but just that these equipments have not been fully installed. It is not negligence of the executive, but those involved must be held responsible.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives attempts to bring his perspective to the discussion.
When the issue directly is their fault, or they've been negligent, or even in inclement weather that is not their fault, or an act of God, maybe they can compensate, as that's probably what happened in your case. But in the case where somebody else, in fact, they're trying to save your life, and they now divert to another airport, due to the negligence, assuming that is the case, that is the negligence of another agency, they cannot pay for the negligence of another agency. They can't. The point is that if you now make a policy, if you run an airline abroad, and you now make it a policy that in Nigeria that if any airline, no matter the cost, no matter who's responsible, if any airline diverts a flight to another country, even though the Nigerian agency is at fault, if you now make that a policy, if I was running an airline, I would cut my losses and not even lift you in the first place. Rather than take you to Ghana, I won't even carry you. So you'll be stranded in Germany or wherever.
The discussion ends with the House mandating its Committee on Aviation to, among other things, carry out an investigation into who is responsible for the flight diversion and cancellation and who should compensate the passengers for the losses.
The amendment by Honorables Faleke and Patasadu and seconded by Honorable Olododo Cook. Those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it.
That's our story. Please talk to us through our social media platforms and watch Big Story over and over and over again on our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. I'm Ini John Mekwa.